Firstly, I'd like to start by just thanking you all for coming to my panel. This is the first that I've ever hosted, so if I get a bit of stage fright, that would be why I might stutter my words, such like that. I'll talk a bit about myself. So I've been in the fashion industry for a few years, and I started out my career in bridal, funny enough. I fit brides for their bridal gowns, and I've also done bridesmaids as well, and then I've done general alterations. So I have a pretty good feel for when you look at what somebody's wearing, exactly how that fits them and how it's meant to look. And one thing I've kind of, what made me want to do this panel is, I hear a lot of people say, I look frumpy in this, or this doesn't look nice, or this doesn't suit me, what's going on here? And a lot of these are quite simple fixes, and I always think that if something is fitted well, it will look nice. And if something fits well, it's not necessarily a case that it doesn't suit you. You just need to get yourself to the point where it's fitting nice for it to look good, right? So get on to content. So this is roughly what I'm going to cover. So I'm going to roughly go through you what kind of measurements you need to take. So say if you're using a pattern, I'll talk to you about garment ease, what that is, what to look out for when you're trying things on. Folds and wrinkles, I'll get into this on more detail, but mostly when you're looking at something a fit, folds and wrinkles are going to be your biggest clues over what's happening. Then I'll talk about common issues that I've personally come across, and then we'll get onto a Q&A, and that's the point where you can ask me questions about your own costumes, about your own clothes, anything that you'd like to know specifically. Okay. All right. So when you are getting your pattern, the first thing that you want to do is define your measurements. So you're going to choose what size that pattern you want to go for, and the typical measurements that you'll need will be your chest, your waist, and your hips. What I like to do when I'm going for a pattern is I will usually go for the biggest measurement, because what you can then do is make a mock-up and take it down. When you're trying on clothes, I always find the best thing to do is go bigger, because it's a lot easier to take something in than it is to let it out. So when you're measuring, never do this alone. I mean, I've done this like quite a few times when I'm measuring some myself. I've tried to attempt to do it by myself, but I would say always get somebody to help you. So could I have a volunteer, please?
All right. Pretend you have a volunteering problem.
So when you're measuring somebody, the first thing what you want to do with your measuring tape is you need to be looking forward, and I realised that I was meant to take a measuring tape, but I haven't actually got one with me. So if anyone has got one on them by chance.
We have someone with a sewing kit.
Thank you very much. Right, so I'm going to just speak loudly now. So if you want to take off your jacket. So for men and women, for when you're measuring the chest or bust, whichever you want to go for, whoever's going to help you measure, you lift up your arms, and you're going to go around the fullest part of the bust, which should be just underneath the armpits. Now when you're taking a measurement, if you just turn to the side, you've always got to make sure that your tape measure is parallel, okay? So you can go straight across and parallel with the floor. So arms down for me. Like that. Now stand if you face forward for me. With your waist, what's really easy to figure out where your waist is if you get a piece of string or some ribbon and just tie it around your waist. And that's the easiest place to find out the smallest part. And what you're going to do, if you lift your arms for me. Are you right for me to touch?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just going to have a quick feel, and I can feel that that's the smallest part of your waist. So I'm just going to, are you okay to take this satchel off for me? With measuring, there's a lot of trust. So I'm just going to find the smallest part of your waist. Now, look forward. And when you're measuring somebody, you just make sure that they relax, that they're breathing, because if you are tensed up, you might be holding your stomach in, or you might be pushing your chest out, you might be sitting in a rib position. So just relax. See, once you did that, the measuring tape actually got a little bit bigger. So that's because he's not sucked in his stomach. Okay, so if you turn to the side for me. Now the hip, a lot of people think that the hip is here. The hip is around the largest part. So it should be just on the largest part of your bum. Right. If you need typically the measurement that's here will be called a high hip. Okay? So always, it says a hip measurement, always take out the largest part of the bum, because that's the largest part. So if you end up with a pattern that's smaller, you're not going to get trousers on, you're not going to be able to get it to fit onto you when you're trying it on. Yeah, you can sit down now. So what I tend to do as well is I will check the thing, I will also go onto the manufacturer's website, and I will check things like what height the pattern is made to. So if somebody is particularly tall, you can then have a look and see their standard measurements and see, say if you are over 168 centimetres, then you will typically find that the pattern will come up a bit short on you. So one thing you can do is then you can think, well, I can go get the pattern in my size for a height that's slightly shorter and lengthen it, or I can go for a bigger size, take it in, but the height will be correct. So you'll find things like the sleeve length will be long enough for you, the length on the trousers will be long enough for you, and such. You'll also find things like sleeve length, which is, again, that will be your length there, your neck width, which is your collar measurement, and your seat, which is the distance from your waist to here. And that's a really important measurement, because when you sit down, it means that your trousers aren't going to go down like that. Okay. So garment ease. Has anyone heard of this before? Losing hands, a few of you have. Okay, let me just go through it quickly. The ease is, it's the added extra material in a garment that is, you would say, typically need to be able to move your arms forward, up, and it's also, you might use it for, say, for the look that you're going for. If you want to go for a really baggy blazer, then you will add extra ease into the garment to be able to achieve that look. So as you can see here, you can get a garment which is really close fitting. So that would be, say, a wedding gown would be the closest fit that you could get. A wedding gown is typically your exact body measurements. It will have 0 ease in it. For a stretch garment, you might find that ease is in minus measurements. So the garment would be smaller than you are to allow for the stretch. And then you can go all the way down to, say, something very loose fittings. If it's a t-shirt, it's just going to be straight. And then again, if you go onto the website, this is McCall's, they'll have information about how much ease. Sometimes they have information about how much ease is in a garment, so you can have a look. And if you felt like you were confident enough to do it, you could add extra ease to create a look that you'd like. Ease is something that you would also want to take into consideration when you're sewing a garment or trying it on, so that when you're pinning it to yourself, if it's meant to be loose fitting, you don't want to be taking it in and making it really tight if that's not the look that you're going for. Okay, so when you try on your mock-up costume or a piece of clothing in the store, what you want to kind of get a feel for is, firstly, is this comfortable? If something is not comfortable, if it feels like it's pulling in a certain way, if when you pull your arms out, if something feels like it's straining, like if you sit down, if something's pinching, that's usually the first indication over whether or not you have a slight issue with fit. When I have clients come to me and I check the fit on something, I will ask them, are you comfortable? Does this feel good? Do you think you could wear this all day? Because the one thing I found is people will often think, oh, I could put up with this. This is tight, but maybe it's meant to be like that. I won't say anything, I don't want to bother her, but that it's really important that you are comfortable. And again, with comfortable, that also, you should be thinking about, can you move about in this? So that's, can I sit in this costume? Can I raise my arms? Can I take a long stride? So when you try on, just walk around, do any daily activities that you might be doing just to check. That is absolutely fine. You don't want to kind of go and make your final garment or like get into about 5 hours wear of it and suddenly discover that you've got a little bit of an issue. Also check whether you can breathe easily. That sounds obvious, but often enough people they won't take it into consideration, and then they'll feel the tightness on their chest afterwards. One thing to think about is if it feels loose or tight. Is it meant to feel loose? Is it meant to feel tight? Ask yourselves these questions. Is it too long or too short anywhere? So when you raise your arms, does the sleeve kind of go all the way back? Or when you sit down, does the trouser leg suddenly all the way come up there? Are you showing parts of your area that you don't want to show? So when you lift up your arms, are your belly showing and you don't want that? Sometimes you might do. So, and most importantly as well, make sure that you do up any zips, any buttons, any closures, so that you absolutely know that everything is working fine. Okay, so we'll get on to folds and wrinkles. When I was training to be a fitter, it's kind of like spotting fits is one of those things that you do kind of pick up with experience, and you kind of learn it as you go along. I definitely did myself, and the things that I will always spot is when there's a wrinkle or a fold, where it is, what direction it's going in, will give you clues over how something is fitting. So in this picture, we've got a jacket and it says too small there, and you can see that you've got some wrinkles going horizontally. Typically that means if you've got wrinkles kind of going like that, usually that means that it's too tight across that measurement. So you kind of have to feel for which direction the fabric is pulling in is usually where it's too tight. You see this lady's skirt here, she's got wrinkles majority from about her waist down to her hips going horizontally, which would suggest that it's far too tight on her hips there. Okay, so I'll do a little bonus round of a costume that I've worn myself, and see if you can spot just what's going up with it. Just give me a few moments to look and see if you can spot anything that's glaringly obvious, what might not be quite sitting right. Okay, so what do people think might be wrong with the costume that I'm wearing?
The underbust line is too tight.
Yeah, so you can see that there's a wrinkle just on my underbust there going horizontally. Is there anything else that people can spot? I do apologise that it's not quite as bright, it's a little bit hard to see.
Is there a slight wrinkle just above your on your high hip? On the waist?
On the waist,
Is there a
just here.
tiny little wrinkle? On your left. So the right as we're looking at the picture. Tiny wrinkle looks like that. Tiny.
On,
Where is that me?
just about here.
Not by the handbag, on the other side.
On this side.
Yeah. Above the hip.
Above the hip.
Just above the hip on the waist.
Yeah.
No?
Can't tell if it's ruching.
I can't
or
tell,
if
yeah.
Yeah,
I can't tell if
wrinkles,
it's
yeah.
like wrinkle. I don't know.
Is there anything else that anybody can spot? Okay, so I'll talk about this in detail. We mentioned here that there is a wrinkle going on my underbust. So what is happening with this costume is basically I ordered this dress off of the bridal shop that I worked at the point, and when they measured me, I was a certain measurement, and when it came and I wore it, I gained just a little bit of weight. It was a close-fitting garment, so when something's that close-fitting, you find that just really small variations in weight can really make a difference. And for me, that was the difference of half an inch. What I tend to do with my costumes is I will add a good inch either side on each seam if it's something like this and the seam is hidden, so that I can take it in and take it out as I need to per gaining or losing a bit of weight, or maybe if I'm just a little bit more bloated for whatever time of the month or anything like that. So the main issue that is happening in this photo is, I'm not sure if you can see it too well on this PowerPoint, but you kind of got there. There is a giant fold and a lot of wrinklings happening on the waist here. When you first look at it, you'd think, well, it's too small on the waist, but what is actually happening here is it's too small all over. So you've got that wrinkle on the underbust, and you've also got, you can't see it in this photo too well, but if you had it on a brightly lit screen, you'd see that the seams are also straining on the bust, and you've got the wrinkle on the waist as well, and you can see that it's actually, can you see these wrinkles? That's suggesting that it's baggy here, and that's not because it's too loose, it's because what is happening is the fabric is folding upwards because there's not enough room on the hips, and the fabric is coming upwards in order to be able to fit to my body shape. So you kind of get, what is happening is the fabric's moving upwards, it's riding upwards, and what is also doing, it's made this dress shorter than it's meant to be. So when I fit into this costume a little better than before, when I fitted it, that seam was actually perfect perfectly in line with the floor, and then as I've been it's risen. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone unsure about what I've just spoken about? Yeah?
You talked about taking a costume in and out depending on your size.
Yeah.
Is that like resawing the line, or is that
Yeah.
pinning it for the occasion?
So what I typically do, if it's easy, is I will take from side seam. So I'll have a really big seam allowance, and I'll do just a line of stitching in, or a line of stitching outwards, which we call taking in or taking out, to just fit it particular to that day. And what you can do is, if you're at the con, you try it harder, you're like, oh no, I'm a bit bloated today and it's not fitting today, it fit yesterday, what's going on? What you can actually do is get a regular sewing needle or a strong thread and just do a basting stitch on the inside and just fold it onto the inside, and you can get it, that's a quick fix that you can do to get it to fit on the day. A lot of alterations that you can do on a garment can be taken out of the side seams. Has anyone else got any questions? So what's wrong with my gown? Answer is too tight. Right, common problems. So, the first thing that I always look at when I'm trying something on is the shoulder. So on a shoulder seam, it's typically, unless it's styled differently, you will want a seam that runs from the top of your sleeve all the way down into your armpit here. The top of the seam, which is called the sleeve cap, is going to start just about when your shoulder is sloping off. So you can kind of feel, if you go up like that, you'll start to feel when it slopes. So that seam should sit right on that slope there. It shouldn't sit several inches down. It shouldn't sit several inches up. It wants to be right on that curve. The only time it won't be is if you have styled something where it might be off the shoulder, that, like say it's a loose fitting garment, or you want it to look casual. That's the only time you'll find that seam sitting differently. And you'll find, quite often you find that if it's not meant to sit lower, if it's sitting where it's not meant to be, you'll find that you'll get wrinkles maybe going across here or going down here. Okay? So this is called a seat, but like we'll say the fit around your hips or around your bottom. I say this is probably one that maybe people don't know much about or have little problems with. On the bottom you need to, usually it will, if it fits right, it will just be nice and smooth. Like the fabric will just drape along, there won't really be any wrinkles or sagging. You can see here that on the picture where it's too tight, you've got your horizontal wrinkles. So you'll be able to see the fabric stretching across or wrinkling or folding if it's too tight. If it's too big, you'll have wrinkles going downwards, and that's where the fabric is folding down. There's too much and it's folding down. So closures, so this would be buttons, zips. You will find that if something is too tight, you'll be able to see on the closures that there'll be sort of wrinkles going that way, or there'll be strains on the zip if it's too small, and if it's too big, you'll find that typically you'll have sagging. So this is your trouser length, and when you're doing trousers, in this picture the length of the trouser is actually a little bit high. So the length of your trousers, this bottom edge should be at the bottom of your sole, right here. And that will allow enough fabric in the trouser for you to be able to sit down without seeing loads of your sock. You should also have a little fold here, which is what we call the trouser break. And that's just because where your foot is here, your foot is slightly raised. That's just going to cause a little wrinkle here, but that's a wrinkle, that's a good wrinkle. And when you're wearing a suit, it's actually really fashionable to have a break at different points on the trousers. So if the trouser is too big, you get loads of scrunching, it's going downwards, wrinkles. If it's too short, you might see a bit more shoe than you'd like. You might see your ankle or your sock. And then that also depends on fit as well. So if you're purposely looking for something that is showing off your ankle, obviously you'd look and you look in the mirror and just see if the edge of the trouser is sitting exactly where you want it. When you're checking a fit, as I was saying that now, it just came to be that when you're trying something on, always look in a full length mirror. Because if you're bending down like this to have a look at your costume, or if you're looking at it like this at yourself, when you bend down like this, your trouser length is going to change, and the fabric is going to shift downwards, and you're not going to be able to accurately see how something is looking on you. So always position yourself straight on in front of a full length mirror, and if you can, have a mirror on the side as well if you want to have just a look at the side and the front at the same time. Okay. So, my skirt keeps riding up. A lot of people think this is because the skirt is too short. If something is riding upwards, it is generally a big sign that it is too tight. Because when something's riding upwards, it usually means that the fabric hasn't got enough room to be able to just smoothly sit down and be able to just sit on the body with freedom of movement to carry on staying as it is. So if something is too tight, as you kind of stretch and bend, it will go, to allow for that movement, it will move upwards to make the space for the movement. You want your clothes to have enough space in them that you can do these movements without the fabric shifting. Another reason that your skirt might ride up is if you have a lining and the lining is too small, the lining might actually it might work against your outer fabric and push the outer fabric upwards. I tend to see this more commonly with loose fitting skirts, where somebody has come in and they say, my skirt's too short. And I'll have a good look at them and I'm like, well, I can't see any wrinkles on the outside of the skirt. It looks fine to me, and if I pull this down, it's long enough. So I would then typically have a look at the lining, and most commonly, as soon as they lift the outer of the skirt up and see the lining, it becomes really obvious that their lining is too small for them. So that's another thing to look out for when you're trying something on, is just check that your lining fits you as well as the garment itself, because the lining is something that you might forget about because it's not something that you see. Okay, so I talked about this a bit already. Your socks showing when you sit down. This is always something I see with someone who's really tall. But it can happen if you're like quite average height as well. So it can mean that the trousers are too small. You haven't got enough length in the trousers for that movement of when you bend your knee. There's not enough fabric to accommodate that bend. So one solution would be that you lengthen it so that it hits your heel, and you have a break in your trousers. But sometimes you find that if you're really tall, like if you're over 6 foot, you might find, or you've got really kind of skinny limbs, you might find that you will just always have just a little bit of sock showing as you sit down. So I can't lift my arms, and what I mean by that is when you lift up your arms, if you can't physically get your arms very high up, or if you're lifting up your arms and it feels difficult, like you're lifting them up and you're like, why does this take so much effort? Or why does that feel really tight here when I lift them up? If you can't confidently and easily lift up your arms, then something isn't quite going right there. And what that most commonly is either it's too tight on your bicep. So when you lift up your arm, you'll find that your bicep naturally gets larger, it flexes, or you haven't got enough room in your back. So you can see this is quite loose fitting my jacket now. If I were to lift up my arms like that, you see that it gets tighter. So all this looseness here, that is needed. That is the extra ease that you need in a garment to be able to lift up your arms and have space to do so. One thing that I notice with people who come to me who want their clothes fitted, and people who are, say, complaining that they can't move properly in their costume, is people think, I want this tight, I want this really forming to my body, and that, yes, it looks great, but you want to have enough room for movement, and if you don't have enough room for movement in your clothing, then you're going to have a hard time. When you lift up your arms, it's going to look good as you stand like this, but you'll be uncomfortable and it might not look as attractive when you're moving about. I've had brides all the time who've said to me, make this dress tight. I want this dress as tight as possible so that I look amazing. But if something is too tight, you'll typically get wrinkles and all sorts. Okay, so I can't do up the zip. If there is too much pressure on a zip, typically because it's too tight, then that zip is going to have a real trouble doing up. Typically you'll see this in movies where somebody's trying to get into their dress and their friend is behind them going, oh, come on, breathe in, do up the zip. If your dress or garment or whatever you're wearing is too tight and there's strain on the zip in that way, you might find that the zip will get stuck, the seams will start to come undone, you might find that the zip breaks. While I've been in fittings with somebody and I've done up a zip, I have had a zip break before as I was doing it up. So that's another thing, that if you're trying something on and it feels pretty good as you're trying on, but if you can't do up the zip and there's not an obvious reason, say you haven't sewn it in properly, if you're having trouble doing it up, then that's probably a sign that it's maybe just a little too tight. Okay, so my top keeps winding down on my bust, so that would be, say, you've got a top that kind of ends here, and as you're moving about day to day, it's coming down and showing more cleavage as you want to, so you keep riding it up like that, and that is pretty, most of the time it's because it's too tight, but not all the time. So if you've got something that's like semi-fitted or it's relatively fitted, what you want to check is that the shape of the bust fits you correctly. So everyone is different. We're all shaped differently. We're not always symmetrical. We might have one shoulder going up here. It's the same with our chest. So you might have one breast that's larger than the other. You might be shallow here. Some people are a bit more full on top. Some people's bust might be slightly lower. There's like a variety of different kind of ways to fit the bust in a tight-fitting garment, because we're all different, and we're all different shapes in that area, and that's the same for guys as well. So, like, the best way to describe this, when you try it on, you'll know if it's too tight by if there's any wrinkles and stuff. But if it's too loose, then what I would do is I would just take a couple of pins, and I would just go around the seams. If there's a seam here, just pinch it until it's forming around the shape of your bust. If it's too tight, you can undo it at the side seams with a seam ripper. Place a piece of fabric behind it, and then pin how much bigger you need to get it. Does that make sense? Because that's a little bit of a more complicated one. Yeah. Cool. So I didn't want to go for too many points, just in case we didn't have enough time for questions. What time is it? I blasted it through it quite quickly, so we've got a good 20 minutes to be able to talk about questions. Got one here?
So I made a jacket, and I started off with a male pattern.
Yeah.
Took it in, added darts, and then added a princess seam down the front because I wanted it quite fitted.
Yeah.
It's not a stretch fabric. It was basically like it was an upholstery fabric. It was like a velvet, but that was the type of fabric I wanted to use. I wanted it to fit, but I also wanted to be able to move my arms.
Yeah.
And I found obviously that I could raise my arms, but obviously it did right up at the back. Is there any way of doing that with non-stretch material, still having it fitted, but having mobility?
So what kind of, was it a jacket?
I can show you a picture of it if it helps. Yeah.
Would be really helpful. What's immediately grabbing me with what you've just said is that you've gone for a male pattern.
It was a male pattern.
Yeah. Male and female patterns are built differently.
Yeah, it was to do with the type of jacket I was making.
Yeah.
It was like a military sort of thing.
So you'll typically find with a female pattern that there is more room at the bust, more room at the waist. With a male pattern, you'll find the shoulders are bigger and the back's bigger. Sometimes I find that a male pattern fits me better because I don't have large biceps, but for some reason in patterns I've got a large bicep, so I find that extra really quite helpful. So you've got yeah. That's happening there is that the bust isn't big enough.
Mm-hmm.
So in the picture that she just showed me, there was I could see some shadowing on the velvet that was going across the armpit and going horizontally from there. And that wrinkling was only happening at the front of that picture. So what I think there is that you probably need...
I've got one from the back as well, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be helpful. But the first thing I can think of is that what's happening in there is that you don't have enough room in the garment for your bust.
Mm.
And that can happen because, say, you've gone... Well, like, patterns are usually made to a very standard size. Oh yeah, I can see them. Yeah. So you'll find, with, like, as I was saying earlier on, when you go onto the manufacturer website, you can see the different measurements that a pattern is made to, the standard body that it fits, which would be, they've gone and made a survey, they've measured loads of people, and they've found a commonality in different sizes. And as I said, everyone's different. So some people, with a bust in particular, some people are going to be an A cup, some people are going to be maybe a G cup, and that's really going to shift your size. And one thing that you can sometimes happens is you can take your measurement around here, and it's saying that you are this certain size, but that measurement is for your total measurement. If you are a slightly larger bust, you are typically going to have more measurement at the front of your body than at the back.
Yes.
So what you usually need to do is you would need to add a little bit at the front and take away.
At the back, yeah. I added
At the
darts
back.
at the back. I added some darts down the
Yeah.
back, take it in. So
Yeah.
I had, as I said, I started off, because I made some twills.
Yeah.
I made 3 or 4 twills
Yeah.
to get the right shape I wanted before I used the expensive material.
Yeah.
And I did bust darts and dust darts there. And it wasn't quite giving me the shape I wanted.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it and I was like, well, actually, there's not that much material there. I could just make a princess theme that went down. I did end up drafting my own sleeve for it
Yeah.
in the end because I didn't like the sleeve that it was meant to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with that one, it was because it was too, what did you say, it was too...
It might be that there wasn't enough fabric at the front. The total width of the jacket was probably okay, but in terms of where your seam sits at the side, there wasn't enough room at the front and then at the back. And an easy way to spot that is sometimes if you kind of look at your arm, have a look at the side seam and just check that it's running parallel in a straight line down your body like so. And then the obvious ones, if it's sort of wrinkling horizontally, or if you've got a top and it's kind of doing that as it sits on you, usually that means that it's too tight. You just need a little bit of extra room for it to be able to sit on your body better. I always like to go big with patterns because you can take it in afterwards, and I think that's what you've done is
It was inside out massive, inside out absolutely huge,
yeah.
and I ended up taking it in a lot.
It's quite difficult when you have a non-stretch fabric because when you want to go really fitted on something,
It was quite a thick fabric as well, which didn't help.
if you don't quite have that room there to move about, particularly on a tailored garment, then you might encounter problems with that. And what I would say is for that costume, I would see if you can find a stretch velvet, but interface the areas that you want to be
So
stiff.
like in like the collars and like and like the facing, like the
So you'd interface this area here, but you'd leave, like, say, the
that
waist
bit.
and the
The
bust.
bits that would move.
You'd leave enough stretch in the fabric, and then the stretch in the garment, in the fabric, will allow for that ease of movement without you having to sacrifice the look of it being like slightly looser than you're intending. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. That helps a lot.
Has anyone else got any questions? Anything that you can think of? So the more questions that we have, the more that I can talk about, even if it's something little, anything that you tried on recently in a changing room and you didn't feel quite right, or any.
You were saying about having more at the front than at the back. Is there a way of accommodating that kind of measurement to measure, or is it trial and error?
So if you have a problem like that, sometimes it might be useful to grab something to help you and take your measurement round, but then also hold measurement at the side of your body, bring it round to the other side of your body, and just check whether that measurement there is the same as the measurement on your pattern or on your garment. If you lay it flat and then measure it, you'll be able to see whether or not there's enough room there. Typically on the chest, if it's a non-stretch garment, you'll want about 10 centimetres ease at least for ease of movement. Less on the waist, you don't need as much on the waist, so maybe only 5 centimetres ease on the waist. On your wrist, you'll maybe want to, between 2.5 and 5 centimetres ease to be able to take it on and off. So on a collar, you'll want enough ease and space to be able to lift your neck up like so, and to swallow as well. On your ankle, you'll want to have enough space for your trouser to fit over your heel. So when you want to make a really tight-fitting pair of trousers, if you take your measurement and tape measure and measure from the top of your foot round over your heel, and then compare that measurement to the bottom of your trousers, then you'll be able to know whether or not you can lift your feet into a pair of trousers. If they're stretch trousers, then you'll be able to get a much tighter fit with that. Is there any others?
So I've got a waistcoaty doublet thing for a costume that has a tendency to, I haven't got many good photos of it, unfortunately. There's that one and that one are probably the clearest.
Yeah.
So it has a tendency to ride up and out like that because it's quite high at the back because it's reconstructed from a Renaissance style. I'm not sure where I would take in to try and hold it down a bit better, or take out if it's in fact been...
So you're finding that the waistcoat, as you wear it, is moving up on your
and
body.
sort of folding, rotating up out like this, so the things at the bottom are sticking out by the time I'm...
So the fabric is kind of doing that?
Yeah.
That could mean that it might be too tight on the back.
Right.
Or it could mean that if something's riding up there, that says to me that usually that something isn't quite sitting at the back properly. It could be that it's made for somebody who's slightly a broader back, and it's because there's extra space there. It's sitting lower and pulling out like that. It could also mean
there is a bad shot of it from the side there.
Is it quite a straight waistcoat?
Yeah.
Is there any shaping to the waist?
A little bit, but not huge amounts.
You might also find that there's not quite enough shaping.
Yeah.
So, like when I showed you that dress earlier on, it was riding up on me. That's because mostly because there wasn't enough room under my hips. If something hasn't got enough shape, it hasn't got enough curvature to it, sometimes it rides upwards because the fabric just doesn't want to sit in that position. It's moving up to the part of your body that's straighter.
Yeah.
Quite often you'll find when anything's riding up that it's riding towards a point in your body where it fits better. So I would have a look at how it's fitting just below your waist or at your waist, and just double check whether there's enough room there, or if it's a similar shape. If it's too loose, then you could try just pinching it and just sewing it to the shape of your body. Does that make sense?
That's some good starting points, I think. Thank you.
Cool. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hello, I have a question about trouser fittings. This is more about commercial, but I'm sure it will come up in this way as well. I tend to find with commercially bought trousers, for like formal or tailored looks, I'll often get like a fold, like just on the back of the thigh, like maybe under the bottom, kind of fairly high up.
So literally right there, would you say?
Kind of, maybe like a bit further down. And it feels to me like, okay, there's maybe too much fabric. Like you could just pinch it away almost with your fingers.
Yeah.
So once you've identified that, is there a good fix that wouldn't mean putting a seam straight round the back of the leg, because obviously that looks awful. But
on a pair of trousers, if something's too big on the hips, you can take it out at the side seams that's a little bit difficult because
Sure.
usually there's pockets there.
Yeah.
So what you can actually do is you can take it from the inner leg seam,
Okay.
and sometimes for people, you might find that the seat on the trouser is longer or shorter than your own.
So I wonder if that's what it is.
It could be. It could be that because the seat doesn't fit you correctly, it's sitting a bit too low and it's riding up. So if it's sitting too low, what you can do is you can, at the seam that comes from the front and then goes round to the back,
Yeah.
you can pinch that inwards, and it will raise the
Bring up the
seat.
seat.
Um,
Okay.
One thing to consider when you do that is just check the length,
Sure.
because when you're pinching the fabric upwards from the seat, it naturally brings the fabric upwards because you'll be shortening that length from the inner side seam
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
When I'm fitting a pair of trousers on a customer, I will usually take it from that seam there. So I'll start at the top and I'll pinch at the back and I'll just work my way down that seam on the bottom, pinching it until it's sitting nice and smooth on the bottom.
Okay.
And then
So would
if
that affect the fit on the leg as well? Is what
it
you're
will
saying?
do,
Bring it
so
up. Got it.
you'll want to just stand in front of the mirror and go, is the length of my trousers still sitting in the same place? Have I suddenly acquired any wrinkles here? Then just quickly check that, because sometimes when you pin something and you think that you like it's because of something else, if you suddenly develop wrinkles, that's the time to think, actually no, it might be a different, separate issue.
Okay, like a misdiagnosis.
So
Yeah.
it's trial and error. Pinch your garment and pin it in different places. If that doesn't work, try pinning it somewhere else up till the point that you're happy with what you're doing. And that's the best way to really learn through looking as well. I spent so long with the women who were training me, going, if I pinch just here, does that help? And I'm going, no, I'll pinch it down here. And I've got loads of really patient customers who just sat there until I figured it out, and I'd be like, don't worry, you're the expert, you just take your time and figure it out. So it is experience and just having a go, taking your time to experiment with something. Quite often, if I'm unsure, I'll go in and I'll type in how to fit a pair of trousers, how to fit the length of the trousers, how to check the fit of your suit jacket. I'll type in things like that, and usually there's like quite a few different blogs online that will explain those processes with you. There's loads of fashion blogs online of like people, especially with suits, who say, this is how you want your suit to look, and there'll be loads of advice and guidance. And when I'm unsure of something, that's my first protocol is to have a look at what other people are saying in blogs.
Yeah.